Welcome, councillors and staff. It's gone 4:30, so we'll commence proceedings. Councillors, given our Zoom meeting, the first thing I would mention is that unless you're actually speaking, could you please make sure that your iPads and machines are on mute so the background noise doesn't come through and disturb other councillors. Thank you. So we'll open the meeting at 4:31, and firstly I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we meet on this afternoon, the Wiradjuri people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Housekeeping staff members who are in the chambers are well aware of the exit procedure. The next item is live streaming of our meetings. The council meeting is being streamed live in accordance with council's live streaming policy. While there's no one in the gallery today, we do have 3 speakers attending via Zoom, so they need to be aware that their comments are captured on our live stream and broadcast live. The chair or the general manager may have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviour and or comments. Next item on our agenda is public forum, and we have 3 speakers to speak on the same item, which is the DA 2020/0020, the outdoor recreational facility for motocross and supercross training at Lot 8 DP 1103-208, 942 Olympic Highway, Young. So the first speaker we have today is Jan Martin. Hi, Jan. You have 5 minutes to speak with, and we're getting close to the 5 minutes, around the 4-minute mark. I'll give you a little nod to let you know there's about a minute left. So welcome, Jane, and if you'd like to start the proceedings off. Jan, you're still muted. You need to unmute.
Got it.
Okay.
Good evening. Firstly, I'd like to say I was unhappy with the notification of this matter coming up at tonight's meeting. I don't live in town, and due to COVID-19, I rarely go to town to get my mail. I picked up my mail on Monday with no letter from council and did not check it on Tuesday, as I only do so once a week. My neighbours didn't even get their mail until Tuesday afternoon, too late to lodge an application to speak tonight. My biggest concern on this issue is that Hayden Millross does not obey regulations, and I fear that you will not be able to enforce any rules that you put in place. On April the 21st, he was heard using the track from my home in Donges Road. The noise was so loud I had to go inside to talk on my phone. By 12 o'clock, I was fed up and went up to the lookout above his track and observed 3 riders on large bikes in extremely close configuration. Another neighbour joined me near the council gravel dump, and Hayden and his companions came over to the fence and asked did we have a problem. We said the noise had been going on for too long, and I said that it really offended me. Hayden told me to go inside and turn up the television. When I replied that I was working in my garden, he told me to go to town and get a job if I didn't like it. I'm 75 years old and a former councillor on this young shire, and I don't appreciate being spoken to in this manner. I'd like to think that his sponsors would not be impressed with his attitude if they were made aware of it. This date was in the total travel ban Australia-wide, and Hayden had travelled from Melbourne to ride his bike, which I assume 2 of his teammates from Melbourne, as I did not recognise them. If the Millrosses don't bother to adhere to a federal government ban, what hope has Hilltops Council to control them in this manner? Whenever I've complained to council staff, I'm told they cannot do anything. I chose to live in Donges Road well before Mr Millross bought his land, and I was aware that the council was sick and tired of all the complaints they received at his previous address and had suggested he move his track out of town. When I'm at home without the bikes on the track, I rarely hear anything except birds and the occasional use of mowers, barking dogs and chainsaws used for winter fires, normal rural activities. I'm concerned that the approval is rather ambiguous regarding the number of people riding on the track at any one time. I'm also concerned that the track can be used 6 days in any week and on and off over an entire day for 52 weeks of the year. In our meeting with Mr. Melross prior to the lodgement of the application, he stated that Hayden may not be having training schools each year as he could be competing overseas, but his brother said he would be doing it if Hayden was unavailable. This does not appear in the DA. I believe Hayden held a school at the Motocross Club facility on the side of town last year, surely a better place than at this track with less neighbours to be disturbed. Mr. Melross stated in his application that there is no other facility nearby, and yet the sign on the corner of Iandra Street and the Olympic Highway clearly points to it, if MX means motocross. All I ask is that you give a really considered response to this application and take notice of all the concerns. Thank you.
We're on mute or not? Thank you for that, Jan. Appreciate that. The second speaker in regard to the same item is Hank Dole. You there, Hank?
Good afternoon, Mayor Ingram and Councillor. My name is Hank Dole and I live at number 10 Hewitts Road next to the proposed development. I have the following points that concern me and my wife. The applicant has stated that Hayden will be away for long periods at a time, and in these times the track will not be used. However, in the recommendations, there is mentioned the possibility of riding 6 days a week for 52 weeks, while in the application it states any of the 4 sons and 3 others, which could result in a continuous use over the year. While in communication with Mr. Melross Sr. and his son Matt, we were advised Hayden cannot physically ride on consecutive days. I therefore asked that the conditions state a maximum of 3 days per week. As the use of the track is to enhance the skills of Hayden in its quest to become part of the world best in the international motocross fraternity, why is the possibility left open for others to use this facility? Of great concern is the history of non-compliance. May I refer in that regard to the DA number 2011 DA 00238, which was for a trial period of 1 year and was regularly not compliant with, even to the extent they kept on using the track without a valid DA consent. The report recommends conditional approval for a year, with the applicant keeping a record of complaints, which I might say leaves a lot of fiddle room. Presumably, the approval will not be extended after a year if there are breaches of the conditions. However, there is no mention in the recommendations of penalties or consequences when the approval conditions are breached. I believe penalties should be included in a possible approval and not be left until a year has passed. That's my whole lot.
Thank you very much for that, Hank.
Thank you.
Okay, the third person to speak in regard to the same item is Tracy Melross. Tracy, you there?
Yes, I am.
Welcome. Tracy, you have up to 5 minutes, and I'll give you a little notification if you get to the 4-minute mark to let you know.
Okay. I wish to speak on this motocross proposal. Since I last spoke to you on the temporary use of this land for the purpose, much has happened. Most importantly is that my son Hayden has now risen to the professional status of the world's best at this sport. This is an important defining factor as to the use of the track as applied. For my sons were once useful, exuberant kids who were using these tracks every waking minute. Now, though, Hayden's guidance, they are focused and only trained within a predetermined training regime for windows of use and fixed timeframes, and are specific to the performance of the outcomes, which is what he used to do. They used to be kids that got out there and rode all the time. Well, they don't do that now, and that's just not what he does. He rides 2 3 30-minute motos in one day, normally starting after 9 o'clock and always finish before 1:30. Never rides hardly on a Sunday. We've been, as he's got older and more mature, he never rides on a Sunday, and he doesn't ride on public holidays. And so all we seek is a moderate but reasonable use and few occasional training camps for a fixed number of riders with no limits on the track, we're not silly people. We're not going to let the kids ride all day. We have neighbours that have 2 children to the right of us that have go-karts. They run up and down the road. I've not heard anyone complain about them. I sit at the window thinking how good it is to see these boys ride. We've got across the road, the opposite lines, at the other side of lines, they ride a beach buggy thing around it. I have a video of that and the noise from our shed, and it was extremely loud, and no complaints about that. Stag Electrical have their boys riding on a block of land 3 doors down, 3 paddocks down from the people that are complaining. There's been no complaints about them. They're a lot louder. I can hear them from our house. But getting on with it, the facility has existed, and we've asked for things to be done to it, like the screening of the trees, which we've done. They're now a lot denser than they ever used to be. Council staff had deliberated over this application for over 4 months, advertised to neighbours, and twice referred the matter to RMS. Further studies have been done and issues raised and all answers provided. The development by all measures is reasonable to the point of council even originally changing the LEP by planning proposal to a LEP that amended the zoning table to allow this activity to including the definition recreation facilities outdoors. After this change, we dropped the ball on reapplying per the first trial development consent when they understand our son's career took off and our demands were following his career to events all around the country, and now the world is understandable. He now wants to return and call young home on breaks and during competition stages. Issues that have been raised and addressed along the DA journey include noise. The noise consultant was engaged at a considerable cost as per council staff requirements. This was done and submitted, and for the closest track to a house, the noise levels are considerably less than the nuisance noise measure of 5 decibels above background noise. Land use staff claimed the use is inconsistent with the zone objectives. If that was the case, why did council assist by changing the zone permissions to allow the use? Why has council allowed weekend motocross events on the same zone land near Monteagle in the past? This is baffling assertion. Council and RMS claim that the tracks used infrequently per the program we put forward with a highway distraction. The tracks are below road level, set well back, set behind vegetation buildings, which constitutes a distraction enough to refuse the development. I don't understand. Wind farms and turbines 100 metres high and 50 metres off classified roads in nearby shires are not. Where economic impact, where did this point come from? This is a permissible use, is in a permissible zone. It fits noise perimeters. It has
about a minute left.
Okay, has a fixture for close up to 8 years or more and discipline controlled usage. And we just want our kids to have fun. After the access to the property is safe and recently approved by council for a subdivision. The proposal is the sensible and controlled use of the facilities that exist. I cannot believe it has taken so long for the council to make a decision. I have a son who is a major event world contender. He and our family are keen to use the existing facilities in a structured and infrequent manner. And I just want to end this to the point where Jan Martin had said he has been travelling from Melbourne. My son has never travelled from Melbourne to ride on the track. He has only lived in Sydney. He has been to Melbourne now and he's in lockdown. He can't come back, and nor will he. So that is
what he says.
Is wrong. That is not true. And how does he not? And he doesn't ride 6 days. He rides 3 days a week is the only training session he does. 3 days at 3 30-minute intervals, and then he's finished for the day. He cannot ride any more than 3 days because it's not within his training facility.
Thank you, Tracy. You're just about to wind up. Have you finished?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, councillors, we'll do the next few matters and then we'll bring that item forward. The next item on the agenda is the any apologies or applications for leave? I don't think there's any apologies. We're all present tonight. So The next item on the agenda, I would ask everyone to be upstanding, please, while we do the expressions of sympathy for the following people. We pause for a moment's silence for the following people: Keith Coots, George Fitzgerald, Joyce Sell, Maxwell Green, Poppy Wilson, Keith Sheehan, Raymond Kingsley-Side, Faye Thompson, Robert Jubb, Wayne Starr, Ainsley Edwards, Elwyn Turner, John Grant, Robert Ryan, Lawrence Irwin, and Marie Trudgeon. Thank you, everybody. Next item on the agenda, councillors, is the confirmation of the minutes of the council's ordinary meeting in July. Have a move and a seconder. Moved Councillor Manchester, seconded Councillor Horton. Thank you. All those in favour? Again, thank you, councillors. The next item is the confirmation of the minutes of the extraordinary meeting held on the 31st of July. Moved Councillor Horton, thank you. Seconded Councillor Manchester, again, thank you. All those in favour? Again, thank you, councillors. It's unanimous. Then brings me to item number 7, any disclosures of interest. I have a disclosure of interest from Councillor Rolls in regard to DA 00103.2 modification. Currently, are there any other declarations of interest? Councillor Tuckerman?
Yes, 2166.
Regional road transfer.
Okay, yep, got that. You noted that down. Yep, very good. Thank you. The next item is no mayoral minutes. The mayoral report is there, councillors. My activities for the past month. If someone would like to move and second that be received, please. Councillor Horton, thank you. Councillor Armstrong, second. Thank you. All those in favour. Next item on the agenda is the councillors' reports, and we have some there reported to council. I'll go around the dots, and if people would like to talk to anything specific on their calendars, we'll start up the top with Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My activity for the last month is in the business paper for all to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 29th of July, the Asset Management Committee. 31st, the Extraordinary Council meeting. August 11, LEP Review Committee. And I don't have the date, the Weeds Committee, which was about 2 weeks ago. It's in the business paper. Thank you. And
thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, mine's up to date. Thank you.
Thank you. Bring me across to Councillor Rolls. You're on mute, Councillor.
There you are. That's better.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mine are as in the minute in the paper today.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Meetings as minuted.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Meetings as per the report in today's agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Manchester.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Meetings as minuted, and the RFS Wombat AGM meeting, the 11th of the 8th, the LEP meeting, the 16th of the 8th, Bronzeville, the Bastard meeting with the General Manager, and the 19th of the 8th, a meeting out at Apollo Fabrications. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 28th of July was a Weeds meeting. 29th of July, the Assets meeting. The 30th of July, meeting with the General Manager and Young District Land Care. 31st of July, the extraordinary meeting. The 11th of August, the Weeds meeting again. And also on the 11th of August, the annual general meeting of the MORRINGO Community Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Move down to Councillor Stadmiller.
Meetings as minuted, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tuckerman, you moved spot down the bottom there.
Meetings as minuted and a number of constituent meetings through the month. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for that. Can I have a mover and a seconder for those reports to be taken, please? Councillor Manchester, and moved and seconded Councillor Wallace. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Item 11, Community Recognition Scheme. Has anybody got anyone to put forward this month in regard to that? No? Okay. Thank you. We'll go on. Before we go to the General Manager's report, we'll bring forward the item that was spoke about in open forum, which is item 2162, and it's on page 195 of the paper copy. Okay, councillors, we have a large report there and a recommendation that reads the council approves development application DA 2020-0020 on lot 8 for a outdoor recreation facility for motocross and supercross training at 942 Olympic Highway, Young, subject to the conditions of consent generally set out in attachment 1 of this report.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, have you moved to move this up? I know you've made the decision to put that to the chamber.
We'll ask councillors then for a mover and a seconder that we move this item forward. Councillor Walker, thank you. Councillor Stadmiller, thank you. Thanks, all those in favour? Thank you for that. That's probably something that hasn't been done. Okay, so as I said, we've got a report there and the recommendation there, councillors, to start off a mover and a seconder, put it on the books, please. Moved, Councillor Armstrong. Seconded, Councillor Tuckerman, thank you. Councillor Armstrong, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do note the concerns of the objectors, and I thank them for lodging their objections. I also note the rebuttals on the part of Mrs. Milross. At the end of the day, I've read through this report from end to end. I must commend staff on the thoroughness of the report and the depth of the report. At the end of the day, I really can't find any planning objection to the proposal. For that reason, I'm going to find myself supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Would anyone like to speak against the recommendation? Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Yeah, and I speak. I thank the speakers who presented their situation today, both Jan and Hank and Tracy. What I have major concerns is, and I can't support it until I see, we hear the conflict of reports between how much activity there is, and until I see a schedule of activity, and that schedule is being adhered to, and the register of complaints and how they were followed up, and the register of whether all the conditions of compliance have been agreed to, and I can't see that in the report. Having lived in that area, as you are well aware, I'm well aware. I am familiar with the amount of noise that comes from that at all times, or was, whether it has changed dramatically. And so I concur with the complaints of the people who objected, and I will just again say I oppose it until I see some sort of guaranteed schedule like activity in the Register of Compliance.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Would anyone else like to speak for it? The seconder? Councillor Tuggleman? No?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Look, I can't see, as in Councillor Armstrong's comments, I can't see any reason at this stage to not, on the grounds of planning, not go ahead with this development application. It is in a permissive zone, and clearly the 12-month approval will certainly give us some indication on whether the DA's objectives are being followed.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anyone else like to speak against? Councillor Manchester.
Yes, it was more of a question through you, Mr. Mayor. Both the applicant, Tracy, Tracy spoke on behalf of the applicant, talked about only possibly 3 days a week. Has there been any consideration given to reducing the time, which is currently proposed at 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday and 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturdays, which is basically 6 days a week? One of the objectors mentioned possibly 3 days, and Tracy mentioned only 3 days. Is there a possibility of a reduction in usage days and times?
I'd pass that on to the Director of Planning, Claire Scott. Might have an opinion on that, Claire. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. The conditions set out on page 216 of the ordinary council meeting papers. In the condition number 22, it has the weekdays from 9 to 5, Saturday from 9 to 2, and no riding shall occur on Sunday and public holidays. However, the 30-minute time to ride and the 30-minute break will actually only see an actual use of that track on any one day of a maximum of 2 hours. We can certainly consider a consecutive days or only 3 days if that's the way the councillors want. There's the opportunity to do that within the condition number 22 of the consent.
Thank you for that, Director. Speaker 4, I'm after Councillor Stadmiller. Is that you? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm in favour of the proposal going ahead, but the biggest worry for me is Council's perceived inability to actually make sure that these sorts of proposals are compliant. If this hasn't had consent for the last 7 years and has operated during that time, I'd like to see where the complaints records have been, how it's been managed, and whether council has been able to deliver due diligence on their part. That's my biggest concern here. So I'm for the proposal, but I'm wanting to see the time frame brought down to 6 months so that we can actually track the number of complaints, if any, and how they're managed. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. Look, I'll take one more if anyone else would like to speak against the matter. If not, Councillor Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, I think like Councillor Stadmiller, I generally support the proposal, but I don't think there's enough in the permissions here that cover the concerns of some of the residents. I also think if it's been operating for 7 years without approval, I agree there's no guarantee we're going to police it properly in the next short little while. I think we need some more, for want of a better way of putting it, stringent controls on how it's operated. I note in the report that it says the applicant's given a verbal admission or acknowledgement that it'll adhere to the regulations. Well, they haven't done that for 7 years. And I think it's important that we remember that these approvals sit with the land, not with the applicant. So should the applicant decide to move on and sell that land, the approvals sit with that land and someone may decide to come in and run it as a track outside the verbal approvals and would quite rightly say, well, I didn't give those verbal approvals. I'm just buying it based on the approvals council put up. I think it's a bit short to say you've been given a verbal approval and expect that to cover future use.
Thank you, Councillor. On that point, I might just pass to the General Manager now to speak briefly in regard to the comments made by Councillor Stadman and yourself in regards to governance and compliance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly since I have been here, I'm sure councillors and the community are aware that compliance and good governance is something that I am very passionate about, and certainly I have made sure that the planning team and the compliance arm of that team certainly are empowered to do their role without fear nor favour, appropriately, ethically, and in accordance with the legislation. And so certainly we are working on ensuring that all residents, ratepayers, businesses, all activities are compliant with whether it be the legislation, whether it be the environment, or whether it be DA conditions. That's all I'll say on that matter. So certainly the conditions outlined in this report are clear in relation to times. There is a short period, 12 months is relatively a short period where if they are not found to be compliant, they will have no basis to contend that they did comply. So the matter is before you, councillors, for your consideration. I just want to give you my assurance that I will follow through on any compliance issue as they are raised. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. General Manager. On that note, we've had some speakers for and against, and the recommendation has been moved and seconded. So I'll put that recommendation. All those people, councillors in favour, please raise your hand. Someone count for me?
John Horton, Greg Armstrong, Brian Ingram, based Wendy Tuckerman.
How many did you get there?
Oh, that's 4. And those against?
Those against?
Tony Flannery, Rita O'Connor,
2, 3, 4, 5,
John
6,
Walker,
7.
Tony Wallace, 7. Matt Stadmiller, Chris Manchester.
That recommendation is lost. Thank you, councillors. We'll go back to our agenda, which brings us to item number 12, which is the General Manager's report. I'll get my page back. There we go. Item 2153 is the cash and investment report, and the report's here, councillors, and a recommendation. Moved Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor Manchester. Thank you. The screens keep moving on me.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Question, Councillor Armstrong.
Just in regard to the cash, I note that over recent months, the cash that's been we've held in our general bank accounts has varied considerably, well over the $10 million mark in each of the last 3 months. I'm just wondering whether there's any opportunity to perhaps redirect some of that cash back into fixed term deposits, even though for short periods. It appears after studying the reports for the last 12 months that we spend about $7 million a month in cash, but there appears to be at least for the last 3 months more than $7 million surplus there. I'm just wondering if there's some strategy behind keeping as much in cash as we have in our investments. Perhaps the General Manager could respond to that.
I will actually pass to the Director of Corporate, Mr. Hughes, for the answer to that question. Thank you.
No sound.
We have no sound from you, Mr. Hughes, at this point. We can't hear you, Mr. Hughes.
pardon then.
Oh, we can now.
Yeah, there you
we
go.
can now. Thank you, John.
Sorry about that. I got glitch with the headphones on.
Going to work.
Sorry. The necessity with the large volume of capital projects underway and the necessity to fund them, and with some major movements in the organisation, we've needed to maintain a highly liquid position, and until the new director comes on board in the organisation and there's a little more stability, it's been necessary to maintain a more liquid position than we would like. I agree with you, Councillor, that we're more liquid than we would ideally be, but it's been necessary to maintain liquidity in order to meet some of the vagaries of the large number of capital projects that we've got underway.
Thank you for that, Director. Having said that, we've got a mover and a seconder, so happy to move that report. All those in favour? I think we got all hands up, unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 2154, outstanding rates and charges and sundry debtors report. Reports and recommendation is receive and note. We'll have a Councillor Manchester, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Horton, thank you.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. It does concern me right through this report, the amount that is overdue 3 months plus in all three categories reported on here. And I do note that they're in the process of looking for a debt, another debt collector or someone to service the debt or collect the debts or whatever. But I haven't got the previous report in front of me, but it seems to be either growing or fairly stagnant around that period. It doesn't seem to be reducing. Just a comment.
Thank you, Councillor, for that. Any more questions or Councillor Horton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask a question of Director John Hughes, please.
Floor's yours.
Thank you. John, has Council given any consideration to offering a discount to ratepayers who pay on time? I know in the ACT, the government, the local government there, offer an incentive to those who pay on time, and I think it's pretty worthwhile. I'm just wondering if we've considered that option. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor, I don't believe Council has considered that option. I'd also note for the information of councillors, this month we've introduced a new reporting format where we've shown the quarterly instalments and the other debtors' information in terms of the ageing position is presented differently than it was in prior years. So we've shown at age 30, 60, 90 days overdue to present a more conventional view of debtors ageing on a commercial footing. So that emphasises the position that wasn't perhaps as clear previously in our reporting. So that's taken the previous position and presented it in a different light. And through the more difficult period of COVID-19, we've maintained our collections percentages. With the appointment of new agents, we will be intensifying and increasing the intensity of our collection effort, if I can put it that way.
Thank you for that. Okay.
Question, Mr. Mayor, question?
Councillor Armstrong.
In regard to the graph on page 32 titled Percentage Prior Year Arrears Collected, I note that that's approaching 90%. Can I just have that confirmed? That's 90% of arrears, because on the previous page it would appear as though arrears is around $2.9 million. And from memory, we started last year with about 2.7, which probably is going back the other way. So I'm just a bit confused about what that graph titled Percentage Prior Years Arrears Collected is actually, what information is providing.
That's
through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll ask our Chief Financial Officer to explain the rationale and the meaning behind that percentage. Ms. Taylor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The percentage prior years collected graph actually relates only to the rates and charges for the 2019-2020 year. So as you'll see there, we've actually stepped it out to a 13-month year to reflect the collections that came through in July 20 as well.
So I take it that this is the total rate, the collection of the total rate levy. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So can I suggest, Mr. General Manager, that it be titled rather than percentage prior years arrears collected, that perhaps it should be total rates collected for the year 2021, perhaps?
Through Mr. Mayor, certainly Councillor Armstrong. Thank you.
Thank you for that, councillors. Okay, I'll put that recommendation of receive and note the report. All those in favour? We'll be unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Takes me on to item 2155. Amendments to the Model Code of Conduct and Procedures. There's an in-depth 200-page, whatever it is, report there, councillors, in regard to that matter and a recommendation. Do we have a mover and a seconder?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. I'll get a seconder. Councillor Horton, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I note that the procedures are in effect or have effect immediately, but there's an expectation that council is going to adopt this model code of conduct. I'm just wondering whether there's an opportunity to further review the current code of conduct if we don't adopt this one now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to pass to Director Corporate on that technical question.
If there's an opportunity to further review the current code of conduct in terms of making variations to the standard code, Councillor, may I, through you, Mr. Mayor, clarify?
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Just to the Director Hughes, just in regard to the optional components of the model code of conduct that Hilltops Council resolved to include, I'm wondering whether there's now the ability for us to review those optional components and to either extend them, strengthen them, or to exclude them.
I believe, Councillor, that this we've received this recommendation is to reflect the changes set out in the circular so that it would remain open to council to adopt these changes and still remain open to council to revise at any time. I don't think they're inconsistent objectives. Respect.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to confirm, Director to Corporate, as articulated, it's always open to councillors to review the code of conduct and procedures as long as they are not mandatory components. So we're in your hands there on any issue that you want to bring before the chamber or have a discussion.
Thank you for that. Okay, I've got a mover and a second. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak against this motion. I understand it will probably have to go through, but as is wrongly attributed to Shakespeare, it was actually Dickens, Mr. Bumble and Oliver Twist. The law is an ass. And this law is definitely one. And I understand that the Supreme Court in Cornish and the Secretary of Department of Planning, Industry and Environment had defined this interpretation of the Act, but I think the Act is wrong. And if there's an example that local government in this state's treated as an impotent department of the Rum Parliament, Macquarie Street, this is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace, and some of the sentiment I share with you. Having said that, councillors, the the reports there and the recommendations there, about moving to second. So I'll put that. So all those in favour? So
Gordon,
could I just have everyone's hand in the air for, please, again, just for a moment till we take the names and get the screenshots? Thank you. Have we got
John Horden, Rita O'Connor, Rolls.
Then Matt was up.
Armstrong.
Wilbo, Flannery and Mollison. Yep.
Stadmiller,
And
Manchester,
Walker.
Ingram.
Yep.
Against.
Those against? Councillor Wallace, Flannery and Walker. Thank you. Thank you. That's.
I will say there, we didn't have an opportunity to speak on that one, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Walker, the opportunity was there. I didn't see your hand raised. If I missed your hand, I'm sorry. But the item's been dealt with now, so I do apologise if that was the case. But given the situation with the screens, don't be frightened to unmute yourself or wave your hand at me so I pick up and make sure that I don't miss anyone that would like to say something. Item 156 on the agenda is the draft service plan for the KRUGER Health and Wellness Complex in Harden. There's a report there, councillors, and a recommendation to be moved and seconded. Moved, Councillor Manchester.
O'Connor.
Seconded, Councillor O'Connor. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I think we've missed the memorandum of understanding. Have we, or am I on the wrong?
That's next, Councillor Flannery. That's 157.
No need to keep an eye on me, Councillor Flannery. That's right. Very good.
Apologies.
You're fine. So, I was back to Councillor Manchester, I think, wasn't I then? Yep.
Manchester O'Connor.
Councillor Manchester, did you want to speak on that matter or happy?
I'll just reserve it and see how it goes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So I've had to move in a second. Anyone else want to speak against that report? Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, I believe there's a resolution on the books that we actually look into the costs of the KRUGER Medical Centre, what it costs to provide those services each year, what it costs to maintain them. I don't know whether the vinyl, whatever you would call it, wraparound that goes in the hydrotherapy pool has been changed or not. And we're still waiting to be delivered that report on the costings to council, which is why I'll be voting against entering into any memorandum of understanding or a service agreement with providers until we get that.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. We've just turned the air conditioner off because we're quite warm here. So sorry for that minor interruption. Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Stadmiller spoke against that recommendation and asked some questions in regard to the situation around the KRUGER Health and Wellness Complex.
We'll pass the Director of Corporate, if that's right, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, the hydrotherapy pool and the costs associated with it are not part of the licensed premises or the contract to which this report refers. For the information of councillors.
Thank you for that, Director. Okay, so we're going to, Councillor O'Connor's got a question. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions. Number one, have we received anything to date, because it is 6 months since the original contract was signed. So have we received anything, because it says within 6 months of the commencing date, the licensee must prepare a document setting out some parameters. So have we received anything?
Director Hughes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is the proposed document that we're putting up as a report that for council to consider, that was framed in the original specifications that were put out to tender, and it's been discussed and worked through with the doctors and administrative staff at the KRUGER Medical Centre. I've met with them on a number of occasions, and we've worked through the documents working forwards from the original tender specifications, and this report has been put forward by agreement with the proprietors of the medical centre. for consideration by council pursuant to the contract.
So what time frame then would we be expecting for the first document to come in if this was passed? How long would we expect one within the next 6 months or?
Well, the contract requires for that to be produced on an annual basis within the contract then, and for it to be prepared within that time frame. The time frames slipped probably they started in March, so we're just on time frame due to, we'd hope to be a little bit earlier, we're just on time frame because of coronavirus, but we're there, and so we'd be hoping it certainly will be within the first year, but it's subject to council endorsing this agreement or some other form of agreement as a performance plan which will attach then to the contract.
Okay, and so then there would be a second review before that year, that initial year is filled, is completed?
There would be a report prepared in accordance with this performance plan as part of the first year's performance review under the contract.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Flannery, I believe, had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and some of my questions have been asked. It's not clear. Well, I was just wondering if the director could advise whether this table will go in the contract. I'm probably wanting advice as to whether there is a contract that's been drawn up and this will be an annexure to the contract and just how it'll sit. I didn't see anything in here about bulk billing services. I do note when I have been into the medical centre that they do offer bulk billing, but there's nothing in this document that I can see unless I've missed it about bulk billing. Will it be? Will there be any percentage bulk billing that's offered? Look, I think Director Hughes has done a fair bit of work on it, but I just a bit of feedback on whether this will be an annexure to the contract, whether the contract will come back to council at a workshop. And it does note on the notes on the last page of this, on page 160, that consultation and timing has been with the Australian GP, Australian General Practitioners Proprietary Limited, councillors. So the Australian General Practitioners Proprietary Limited, that's not the Council of General Practitioners, is it? It's a private organisation. Who, if the director could advise us who the Australian General Practitioners are, please.
Thank you. Director Hughes.
Australian General Practitioners Proprietary Limited is the proprietors of the medical centre at the KRUGER Medical Centre complex in Harden. They were the successful tenderers who were awarded the contract by council. So that's the name of the administration company that runs the site. These measures and metrics are within the contract that was endorsed by council, and so performance against these metrics is council can ask for a number of performance remedies under the contract by way of performance improvement through to termination of the contract as remedies under the contract if the performance isn't considered satisfactory by council. And there's a range of things that were in the contract that council entered into under the tender. And I'd remind councillors that the contract was a 1-year initial contract with then extensions under 3 triennium extensions up to 10 years. So the first performance agreement performance plan will be a focal point for the ongoing extensions of the contract over 3 triennia. So, and this performance plan is then something that's then revised on an annual basis as well as assessed on an annual basis between the parties. Subject to
So this will attach to the contract moving, given that they were granted a 1-year license. This will attach as an annexure, and there'll be metrics in it. Was the question. And are they up to date with rental payments?
They are up to date with their rental payments. However, there are commercial matters. They're certainly not in any way behind or in default on their rental payments, but there are commercial matters that I wouldn't discuss in open council. But then there are no disputes or defaults in the agreement.
Thank you. Councillor Stadmiller had another question. Councillor.
Just a question for the General Manager. I requested before and was denied access to the original submissions by all of those parties tendering for this. I was just wondering when he could advise me I'll be provided access to that, and also when I will be provided with the answer to that resolution as to what the costs are to maintain and run the KRUGER Medical Centre as it sits on the corner of East and Albury Street for Hilltops Council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, pass to Director Hughes on the probity on releasing of the tender applications. And as to the resolution for the costings, I also pass to Director Hughes. Some of that information most likely to be provided as part of commercial in confidence, but not in public forum. But Director Hughes?
The question on the resolution, I'll have to take on notice because I'm not exactly certain of the. I'll need to clarify what Councillor Stadmiller exactly is referring to. If he's referring to matters beyond the costs of the hydrotherapy complex, then I'm not aware of the resolution to which he's referring, so I'll have to refresh my memory. In terms of the matter of the tender submissions, they're matters that have been adjudicated by the General Manager and referred externally, and those matters have been resolved, and I don't believe there's any further resolution to or any further follow-up action required on those matters. Those documents won't be issued. There's no further obligation on to issue those documents, and I don't believe they will be issued.
Thank you for that, Director. Councillor Stadmiller's got his hand up again. Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, it's very clear, set out within our roles and responsibilities as councillors, that we are allowed access to any information which we deem will allow us to do our job in the best possible way. So I reject that assertion by the Director there that won't be made available. It should be made available, and if it's not going to be made available, there has to be reasons given why from the General Manager as to why it won't be made available.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. I'll hand over to the General Manager now just for a moment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll take that on notice to throw through the processes and give you a fulsome response on why we would be able to or unable to respond to your inquiry. So we'll take that on notice.
Thank you. I want to keep moving along here. I'll go to Councillor Flannery. Had his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
I put this.
Another question. When we were considering the various offers for the medical centre, and an ongoing issue has been VMO availability of doctors for the Harden Hospital. There is a metric in here, and it says medical support and service at the local hospital is the issue. The metric is number of hours medical support is provided to the patients in the local hospital, and then the goal is on-call cover 9 to 5. I mean, it's there for everyone to read, but that is very different to ensure. The original agreement was that there is always a doctor available for VMO, and I don't have it in front of me, but when we voted on this, and that I don't believe that issue, metric, goal, and measure cover what was the intention or the concern, or certainly my intention or my concern. I think there needs to be a metric that the there needs to be that the lessee needs to ensure, or the contractor needs to ensure, doctors available to perform VMA duties. And I would like to see that amended, or the director assure us that that will be included, not just number of hours. I think that's very different.
I'll go to the director then. I'll consider after the director's answer just where we're going to go with this item, councillors. Director.
Through you, councillor, I believe that a doctor always available is not a condition of the contract, and really couldn't be. These are conditions that were drawn from the conditions of tender and were correspondingly drawn from the expert medical professor's advice that was prepared by council during the period of review of the prior medical practitioner's service with council. So these performance measures have some history, and these performance metrics were drawn from that. So a low percentage or a high percentage is the performance metric. A doctor always available would end up being a full-time employee of the hospital in effect. So we couldn't ask for that realistically as a performance metric, because it wouldn't be achievable as an outcome to be delivered, because such a doctor would be in situ at the hospital. So I don't think that is possible.
Thank you, Director. Now I'll go to Councillor Walker, who's got a question because I missed him last time. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Yes, following that response from Director Hughes, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, I have a real problem with the degree of the contract. I think this contract is out of order. The way I understand it, our agreement, the council's agreement, is between the lease of the premises and the professional and who leases it, not the degree of professional services that it includes. It's so fluid and so fluctuating. I think we should be getting some sort of professional advice on this, and I think we've overstepped the mark a little, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillors, I'm going to put the recommendation that says receive a note, report and approves and authorises. All those in favour? I'm going to put this, Councillor Flannery. We've had a fair bit of discussion.
I'd like to move an amendment. I'd like to move an amendment.
Move an amendment, Councillor Flannery. What's your amendment,
I'd like
Councillor?
that we receive a note and report, and the key metric be that there be an inclusion of a minimum number of hours.
Who's writing this down? Yep, okay.
That the key metric regarding hospital VMO services include a minimum number of hours, as agreed between the local area health service, doctor, the lessee and council. Number of hours per week. I think that's quite reasonable.
I need to ask a question there. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I need to ask the Director of Corporate, is the proposed amendment by Councillor Flannery within the ambit of the contract, i.e. would we be able to fulfil the motion put forward by Councillor Flannery? Director Hughes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the effect of that such an amendment would be to return the report to negotiation with the proprietors of the medical centre, which is quite in order, and then to bring it back with any, and subject to that, if it was in order. It's not for me to speculate on what, it leaves it open as to what agreed hours there would be. So it leaves an open negotiation on the table, which is not a desirable position for an open meeting of council to leave something on the table. So I'd suggest, if that's the case, that perhaps it be parked and brought back.
Councillor Tuckerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't we asking this company to ensure that a doctor has VMO rights to the hospital, so they have a contract with the health district, and they must maintain that right, so they then can service the hospital?
You, Mr. Mayor, the contract indeed requires that the doctors who are proprietors of this medical centre provide visiting medical officer services at the hospital, which they do, and that this performance plan provides an annual report to council on the extent to which they've performed those services at the hospital.
So isn't the measure, Mr. Mayor, isn't the measure that they have the contract and that they're providing a service to the hospital and that it's satisfactory to the hospital and the community?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the measure is the number of visiting medical officer attendances, which in hospitals are occasions, more or less occasions of service, because the doctors are called in on occasions when they're required, sometimes they're there on preset bookings, but by and large they're called in on an as-needs basis when patients present to the HARDEN MURRUMBURRAH Hospital when they're unwell and the doctors are called in.
But it's not
so
just
they
during...
do routine rounds.
Mr. Mayor, could you call for a seconder, please, so we can debate? So
but Councillor Flannery, I missed all that. I'm just about to the point
could you call for a seconder? If I can't get a seconder, it's irrelevant. If I get a seconder, I'll talk for the amendment.
Anyone like to second that amendment?
It's just, Mr. Mayor, as the mover of the original motion, I'm happy to include Councillor Flannery's clause in the motion, assuming the seconder is, because right from the beginning, when we was doing these negotiations back in December, January this year, and last year, this year, the VMO was a critical part of this, and I can't see any reason why we can't put a matrix in this schedule to see whether they are attending the VMO at the hospital on a regular basis. And I believe that's all that Councillor Flannery is after.
Thank you. So the mover of the amendment was Councillor Flannery. The seconder was Councillor Manchester. Is the amendment put up so everyone can read what the amendment to it is? I presume Councillor Flannery...
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. As I was the mover of the original motion, I'm saying that it can be included. I've got no problems about including it in the original motion.
Thank you, Councillor Manchester. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Wallace, I believe, was a seconder for the amendment. Is that correct? Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Councillor Flannery, I presume that the recommendation reads that receives and notes a report, then goes on A and B are gone, and your amendment sits underneath there. Is that correct? Thank you. That be put up for all councillors to see, please. Just checking. Just making sure. Councillor Flannery, is that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy with that, and I'll just speak for the amendment. It was a key issue in the previous lessee was the lack of VMO services to the hospital. It was certainly a part of the discussion.
Who's got the dog? I know now. Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Keep going.
It was certainly part of the discussion and the actual interim proposal that the current lessee put forward as part of their plan. And as I see it, what sits in the schedule on page 158, they could offer 1 hour and they would have met. I mean, it might not be the satisfaction, but unless we have a minimum metric of 20, 30 hours, they quite rightly could say, well, we've provided an hour a day. Who said we had to provide 2? Who said we had to provide 4? We need a minimum metric in there that we can say, okay, it's 20 hours a week. You've given us 20 hours. You've given us 18. You're near enough. But not having any metric just leaves it open for the same issues that blew up on us last time. And I think a reasonable group will agree to something that is, that they can achieve and that the local health service believes is sustainable.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just hand to the General Manager just for a moment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask the Minute Secretary to once again put up the minute, just to ensure that we have the right proponents in here. I saw local government services, and I believe it's actually the local area health services, as well as we need to negotiate with the doctors/lessees and councils. No, I'm passing to Director Hughes. Who are the people who we need to have within this motion, please? Director Hughes. John?
That went well. Director Hughes, you there?
Yes, I'm trying, Mr. Mayor.
There you are.
Please be patient with me. My paralysed hand is very slow on the mouse. My
impatience is very quick.
Yeah. So, Director Hughes, please.
When you're all ready, I'll continue. The local area health service is the purchaser of VMO services. They set the demand for the amount of doctor services that are purchased, but they are not a party to the agreement between council and the doctors, and ought have no part in this resolution.
So that local area health services is out, and it's just the doctors' lessees. And I suspect a more accurate motion would read the Australian General Practitioners Proprietary Limited and Council. Would that be correct, Director Hughes?
I'm in councillor's hands, but I would think so.
Thank you. That reads as it should. Councillor Flannery, are you happy with that amendment? I just wanted that clarified.
Look, subject to the comments that was just made by Director Hughes, I would have thought the local area health service could have provided some advice or thoughts, but if he doesn't believe they're part of it, then they should be left out.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, General Manager, and thank you, Councillor Flannery. Okay, we've got the added up on the screen and the amendments there. Move in a second. All those in favour of the amendment?
Question. Can I just have a question before we vote, Mr. Mayor, on the legality of that? I'm a bit concerned about whether we can stipulate minimum hours, because the service has a contract with them to provide VMO. I think what we have to establish is that they're meeting the demands of the service. We can't set a minimum hour because they might not get called out.
A very relevant point. I don't think at this stage we are setting those hours. I know Councillor Flannery mentioned that, but this was about going back to a document that's a draft to be amended in some shape, working through with the current people who are there. I just don't know if we can land on that this is a draft document to go back, sit down with the people that are there now to work out about what they might say about their hours of service to the hospital. We all know the VMOs is a very intriguing process, how it works, and Councillor Tuckman is quite correct. We haven't got any power to say and demand, but I believe with negotiation, maybe in a draft document, that could be reached. Look, Councillor Horton, I'll call you. I'll go to you in a moment, but we've had considerable time spent on this matter, and I'm pretty sure everyone's got a rough idea of an expression of what we're trying to do here. They've kept this draft document agreed between the two parties. I'll take a question from Councillor Horton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, my understanding of the VMO rights has nothing to do with council and the doctors. It's between the health, Murrumbidgee Local Health, and the doctors. Murrumbidgee Local Health give authority to those doctors they want to visit the hospital, provided they're qualified to do that, and the hours and the days. It's between the doctors and the Murrumbidgee Local Health. That's my understanding of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. I'm going to put the recommendation with the amendment there. I'm putting the amendment. That's what I'm putting at the moment. So all those people in favour of the amendment recommendation. Can we count someone for me?
Horton, Flannery,
Numbers.
O'Connor, Wallace, Stadmiller, Manchester, Ingram, 7.
Those against the amendment?
Walker, Tuckerman, Armstrong, Rolls.
And Rolls. Okay, cool. So the amendment is carried. So the amendment now becomes the motion. All those in favour of the motion?
Horton, Flannery, O'Connor, Armstrong, Wallace, Stadmiller, Manchester, 7.
Those against? The recommendation motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 20, 157, Memorandum of Understanding, Variety, the Children's Charity New South Wales ACT.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move a motion.
Councillor Armstrong.
I'd like to move a motion that council receive and note the report, full stop.
Councillor Armstrong's moved the motion that we receive and note the report. Do I have a seconder for that?
Second.
Councillor Horton. Councillor Horton. Okay. So, Councillor Armstrong, would you like to speak to?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I thank the director for the report, but it would appear as though this MOU is now redundant. It expires in about a month's time. Largely, the design is done, the consultation has been done. It's out to tender now. Hopefully, the tender will be fulfilled and the construction can start shortly. There has been a huge vacuum in terms of meetings for this committee in any event. I do know there's been one very recently, and I thank Councillor Rolls for taking part in that meeting. But I don't think there's any need for it going forward with the project. I think that we should be able to receive and note this report and then move on with the construction and delivery of this excellent facility to the community.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Has anyone got any speak against that matter? Take that as a no. Thank you very much, councillors. Okay, moving to second to the recommendations of council receive and note the report. All those in favour? Against? That's unanimous, councillors. Thank you. Next item is item 20158, private weeds report. Councillors, there's a report there, and the recommendation is we receive and note the report. Councillor Wallace moved.
I'd like to move Part A and certainly Part B. It's the recommendation, Mr. Mayor, that council investigate the development of a business model for private weed spraying.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded, there's coming everywhere. So, Councillor Tuckerman, thank you. Moved, Councillor Wallace, seconded, Councillor Tuckerman. I'll just get that A and B up on the screen for everyone before I go any further, councillors. Council investigate the development of a business model for private weed spray. That's it. Yep. Councillor Wallace, that's how it went.
the brevity is probably the simplest thing in this matter, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Wallace, would you like to speak to that, or would you just like to be dealt with?
Yeah, no, look, I would, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Look, I find this report quite perplexing. It was only a few weeks ago we sat here and passed a operational plan and budget that accounted for an increased revenue of $500,000 from weed spraying activities. And then the same department has written a report saying that we probably shouldn't really be doing very much of it because we have very limited operational plant and staff resources. Well, those two courses of action don't seem to accord with each other. Furthermore, the market competitiveness appraisal on page 171, most of the private, I mean, I may be wrong, maybe Councillor Flannery can correct me, but I imagine most of the private weed spraying that was done previously through the Southern Slopes Noxious Weeds County Council was one person with a bike. This sort of level of budgeting with two people sitting in a ute and then with plant hire costs that are excessive don't, to me, provide a fair appraisal of what is required. And totally overstate the cost to council. So I think that's why we need to have a proper business appraisal. We need to go into this. If we're going to actually get on top of weeds in this area, which have been let go for a number of years now, we need to be able to combat them professionally and have a proper model where we can combat the problem. And it can be made to work and it can actually make money for council, but it's not if we follow the course that's proposed in the report. So that's why I recommend the recommendation I did. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Would someone like to speak against what's been put on the table? No one like to speak against it, but the second, or anyone like else to speak for it? Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did a bit of checking in the last couple of days about the market competitiveness, and I contacted a few private people who spray, and also found out that through the Southwest, or whatever it was called beforehand, they always did have two operators with a ute or a quick spray unit. The bulk of the people locally are charging about $130 per hour. In Queanbeyan and Yass, or outside Yass, they're charging about $150 an hour. So that rate seems to be comparable. And they are saying that now they're all going with two operators and a Land Cruiser and a quick spray. So this seems to be what's actually happening at the moment. And it's comparable.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. We had a couple for and no one wanted to speak against it. So that being the order of the day, I'll put the recommendation as put by Councillor Wallace. All those in favour? Unanimous, team. Thank you very much for that.
Mr. Mayor, if question to the General Manager in regard to this matter.
The matter's been dealt with, Councillor.
This goes to information that Council provides in regards to weed spraying currently, as of 4:39 this afternoon anyway.
So you're talking about the report and the issue we just dealt with, because as I just said, Councillor Armstrong, it's concluded and I need to move on once that matter's been resolved. There is to be no discussion in regard to that matter afterwards.
My question related to the council fact sheet that is provided on council's website that relates to its costs for spraying. And it was, I guess, would that fact sheet be updated as a result of this resolution?
That's a matter that can be talked offline with the appropriate director, Councillor Armstrong. I'm sure they will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. 2159. Development application stats. There's a report there, councillors, and a recommendation. Moved, Councillor Manchester. Seconded, Councillor Horton. Thank you. I've put that report. Everyone's happy with that? All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. 20. I've got one somewhere. 2160. Is a request to waive Monteagle RFS Brigade Station Extension Development Application Fees. Councillors, there's a report there and a recommendation there. Moved, Councillor Walker. Seconded, Councillor. Got a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Wallace. Thank you. Councillor Walker, would you like to speak?
Yeah, being an essential service within the community, I suggest that it's in full support of council, and I would recommend that the development application waiver would be in council's favour.
Councillor Walker, I might just mention to you there, you've missed a word in the recommendation. The recommendation is not to waive the report, not to waive the fees, sorry. And I gather from what you just said then you would be supporting the other way.
Indeed.
We'll leave you as the mover.
I withdraw my moving of that recommendation.
Look, I'm advised we can't do that, so that's only a technical point about being the mover and the second up. So we'll leave that there for the moment. So Councillor Walker doesn't wish to speak for the recommendation. Is there anyone like to speak against the recommendation?
Question,
Councillor Armstrong.
To the General Manager. Who is the applicant here? Is it the volunteers that make up the Monteagle Brigade, or is it the people ensconced in the edifice at Harden?
I'll need to pass to the Director of Planning, Claire.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. The applicant is the Rural Fire Services.
Thank you very much for that, Director. That clarifies that for you, Councillor Armstrong.
That's as clear as mud, Mr. Mayor. It doesn't clarify anything at all. The question I've asked is whether it's the volunteers that are making this, being asked to pay this charge, or whether it is indeed the RFS headquarters at Harden. There is a significant difference in the way that I look at this charge, given the huge amount of money donated to the RFS as a result of the terrible bushfires earlier this year.
Okay, we got the Director would like to answer to that or clarify for Councillor Armstrong.
The application that we have in front of us just notes Rural Fire Services, and it is for 3 Monteagle Stock Route West Monteagle. That's the information provided to us.
Councillor Tuckerman's.
Can I just declare a conflict of interest, please, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Councillor. That was the one you declared earlier, was it?
No.
No.
It's a new one.
It's a new one. Okay. Okay. So.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Someone's got a question. Councillor Plenary.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just on the attachment, it says to whom it may concern, and is there does the letter requesting the fee waiver provide any answers as to who the applicant for the fee waiver might be? I do share Councillor Armstrong's concern.
Director Scott. Again, we come back to Director Scott, and I don't know if Director Scott's any more information to pass on, but I will try again. Director Scott.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The information has been redacted in the attachments without me physically going out there and looking at the file. I couldn't provide that information, sorry.
Where am I now? Councillor O'Connor. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When this letter was received, were the applicants given the information that they could ask for financial assistance and go via that way, as opposed to asking a fee waiver? Because this sets a precedent for any of the RFS units to then, want a fee waiver for any development they want to do.
And that's a very relevant point, Councillor O'Connor. And given that we pay 11% of this anyway in the long term, I had some concerns. Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As far as I'm aware, Council does not have a policy of waiving application fees. End of story.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Look, I'd like to move in a second, a bit of discussion about this. I'm going to put the recommendation. All those in favour of the recommendation? Can I get a count?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
Yep.
Those against?
Walker.
Councillor Walker and Councillor Tuckman declared an interest. Yeah. Thank you. The recommendation is carried. Thank you, councillors. Takes us to 2161. Modification driveway and car park seal, Marsden Street, BOOROWA. There's a report there, councillors, and a recommendation. Councillor Stadmiller moves. Seconded by Councillor Tuckerman.
And Rolls have a conflict.
And Councillor Rolls has declared a conflict on this matter, so that's fine. Okay, I'm going to move into seconder and questions. Got happy to put that. All those in favour? Against?
Armstrong.
Councillor Armstrong's against. That recommendation is carried. Thank you, councillors. 2162 we've dealt with. 2163, the establishment of the alcohol-free zones in Harden, MURRUMBURRAH. Councillors, there's a report there and a recommendation there. So I have a mover and a seconder for the moved. Councillor Manchester, thank you. Seconded Councillor O'Connor, thank you. Who's happy enough with that? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Just a correction in the
sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I just a correction in the recommendation. They've got for a period of 4 years from the 20th of May 2020 to the 21st of May 2023. That's only 3 years, not 4 years. So I'm not sure whether it's meant to be a 3-year period or the 4 years should be to May 2024.
20, 21, 22, 23.
Depending how you take it from May 20 to 21, 22, 23. It's 3 years.
It's only 3 years, Mr. Mayor.
I'll let the staff work that out. Yeah, that's fine. It's way above my maths, Councillor. Thank you.
Are we, just on that point, we agreed that it ends on the 21st of May 2023?
That's the important part.
That's the important part.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Is it 2023 or is it 2024?
2023.
Well, it's 3 years then, Mr. Mayor. So
that's correct. As I said, that we've done and dusted that one. So thank you for that. And pick it up. Take me to 2164. I thought we'd voted on it.
No, we didn't. We got a mover and a second. Councillor Manchester moved it, corrected it before the vote. So we need to have a.
I think that's fine. We voted. All those in favour of the recommendation? Again, it's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Unanimous before. It's double unanimous. 2164, Local Road and Community Infrastructure Program Grant. Now, councillors, there's a little bit of a report there and a recommendation. Well, do I have a mover and a second? Move Councillor Manchester, seconded Councillor Tuckerman. Okay. Councillor Manchester, would you like to talk to that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, I've been through it. I'm happy with most of it, except probably the truck parking bay, which I believe that, you know, a preliminary costings of $70,000 to me is way over the top to what you know, I think is needed out there. I don't think it needs to be an elaborate situation because we're not sure with the current climate and how Greymont are handling the booking in of trucks, just how much use it's going to get. So at this stage, I think it should only be just a different report.
Councillor Manchester, just whereabouts in this report are you referring to? Sorry,
page 306.
Yeah, I think you got the wrong report, Councillor.
You jumped to report, Councillor Manchester.
Oh, sorry.
164 Local Road and Community Infrastructure Program Grant.
Yeah, sorry. I turned over too many pages.
Okay. Did you like to talk to you moving of that one, or would you like to sit on that?
No, I'll just hold to that.
Councillor Armstrong had his hand in the air.
Question. In terms of I guess technical questions in regards to the replacement of a sealed path with a concrete path, is that asset renewal or is that a new asset? It appears to me that it may actually be a new asset rather than renewal, given that it's going to increase the capacity of the footpath in terms of load.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be my understanding as well.
I note that this is for renewal, yet there are two paths on there amounting to $68,000 that would appear to be incorrectly added there. Clark Street, Harden, and Bathurst Street, Harden. The other issue, I guess, I don't know whether the author of the report's aware that there is a local contractor that does asphaltic concrete in Young, and it may have been worthwhile having a discussion with that contractor, given his past performance at the significant and rather inexpensive paths that were placed through the Weir area by the contractor. The figure of $278,000 for what appears to me to be less than 1,000 square metres seems to be rather generous. But anyway, I'll defer to others in that regard.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. On that point, a technical point to start with. The other one, there was a question about the estimated costs. I might ask the appropriate staff member to speak to how them costs will come about in regard to that.
Through Mr. Mayor, that will go to our manager, civil operations, Mr. Chris. If you can talk to that, please.
Through the Mayor, the tabled remedial works or renewal works are a mixture of acquired estimates or quotations that we have had from contractors, or unit rates that we've based upon previous works. So there's a mixture there. In respect of the asphalt works, we have gone and sought just some quotations, indicative quotations. I've taken the note from Councillor Armstrong about the local contractor, but with the monies involved, we'll have to get at least 2 to 3 quotations to go out on those works. And the mix itself will have to be supplied externally out of the region. And I've talked about the unit rates with the other projects.
Does that answer suffice, Councillor Armstrong, with your questions?
I take that on board. I'd really like council to ensure that it's getting value for money. I do note that the asphaltic concrete on the other side of the road was undertaken for about $160,000 from memory, but things have gone up obviously. In regard to the asset renewal v asset replacement, the General Manager, can you confirm that those two items are in actual fact not renewal but are new assets, in which case they'd fall outside the scope of this original resolution?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would agree with that.
On what basis, Mr. Mayor, if the General Manager could advise us on what basis he would agree with that?
For a renewal, you're replacing like with like. If it is a substantive improvement or otherwise, it would be deemed to be a new asset.
So Councillor Armstrong's proposing that we go to asphaltic concrete as a cheaper option, and yet in Clark Street and Bathurst Street we're replacing presumably sealed path, i.e. asphaltic concrete, with concrete. So you're proposing on one hand that it's an upgrade, on the other hand you're saying we should go to a downgrade.
No, Councillor, you're saying that asphaltic concrete and a two-coat seal are not the same thing. They are significantly different. I'm quite certain you'd be aware of that. What I'm suggesting is that those two items are incorrectly placed in terms of the resolution, but if council so decides that they want to create some new assets with that, then I'm comfortable with that, but they need to be identified as such.
Okay.
So is the issue in the description of replace sealed path that's been technically we know that's technically the case, do we?
Councillors, on that note,
the previous resolution related to asset renewals rather than new assets. That's all.
Councillors, look, given the conversation that's just been had, I don't know if I'd be happy enough to defer this matter to next month till we come back with a full and comprehensive report in regard to that matter, and we can all have some clarification so we know exactly what we're putting our hand in the air or not in the air for. I'm bidding your hands, councillors. If you're happy to do that, I'm happy to move that we defer this item till next month till we get a full and comprehensive report on the matter. That was seconded by Councillor Stadmiller. So I'll put that, if councillors, that we defer this matter till the September council meeting. All those in favour? I think we've got unanimous. No.
2, 3, 4, 5,
Any, those against?
7.
Anyone against?
Untitled and Manchester.
And Councillor Tuckman. 3 against. That the matter will be deferred to the September meeting for a... and those items that were discussed in regard to that point can be dealt with in between this meeting and next meeting. So when it gets back to council, we will have a definitive matter to vote on. Thank you. Item 20.165, Galong Mine Voluntary Planning Agreement, Road Component Update. Councillors, there's a report there and a recommendation which says receive and note the report. I have a mover and a seconder to put it on the table. Councillor Walker's moved it, seconded by, was that you, Councillor Manchester? Did I see? Thank you. Would you like to talk to it? Any questions, Councillor Flannery?
Yeah, question, Mr. Mayor. As alluded to by Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Manchester, sorry, just earlier in the meeting, whilst I support the general program, I think the truck parking bay estimate, and it is a preliminary estimate, but look, I think that is a miss to expend that much money out of these Section 94 funds or VPA funds is excessive. We are really looking for a hard stand that gives trucks the option to park there should they not be able to enter the mines at the desired times if they have early bookings. I just don't think we need to spend that amount of money. I would accept that if it's a preliminary estimate, it might be subject to further reworking.
Thank you for that, Councillor. And yeah, as stated, it says receives and notes the report, and I'd imagine that those costings would be looked at again, especially now that it's been brought to staff's attention by yourself and Councillor Manchester. So,
Mr. Mayor, just regarding, whilst we're on the issue of Galong Mine VPA agreements, we had an asset management meeting, and it is relevant to this, back in July. I think it was the 27th of July. And it was noted by the acting director that it's approximately $50 a square metre for a road of stabilisation. And with approximately 14 kilometres of the proposed Galong Road to be done up, which we don't have a VPA for yet with the mine owners, and at a 10-metre width, my estimate is that's about $9 million. I understand we only have $5 million allocated as grant funding and a co-contribution from council for the upgrade of that Galong mine. Could we be advised of where, subject to my figures being totally wrong, we're going to get the other $4 million from? And do we have a VPA discussion in place for that yet?
You're going to do that. Just find the, it sounds like, just from what I'm hearing, that your question may be taken on notice, Councillor Flannery, but I'll defer to someone in VPA. I can probably speak that we are having communication and talks with Greymont, and at the appropriate time when that becomes relevant, and it's relevant, but it becomes absolutely relevant, we will be discussing a new agreement, but currently there's an agreement in place. So that's what we're here to at the moment. So I'll pass the General Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I need to take that on notice, and I'd like to have a further conversation with you, Councillor Flannery, about your costings, so we could work through those with the manager civil operations to look at those numbers that you have.
They were simply from the director at the asset management meeting. He quoted $50 a square metre he might like to, and that was for stabilisation. I do know with the amount of culvert sitting on the side of Cunningar Road, we're planning on something far more substantial than a stabilisation. I think every culvert along Galong Road is proposed to be replaced.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will pass to the Manager's Civil Operations if you can respond to that and not take it on notice, but I'm in your hands, Manager, Mr. Chris.
Through the Mayor, I'll take that one on notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Stedmiller.
Mr. Mayor, it revolves around the Galong mine. Where are we up to with the crossroad? Just as a question for the General Manager.
I'm going to take it or not? Look, I'll need to take that on notice, Mr. Mayor. I'm not aware of I understand the purchase of the land is proceeding, but I haven't had an update recently in relation to actual exchange, etc. So I'll take that on notice and get back to councillors on that. Thank you. Okay, I had a mover and a seconder. And
Mr. Mayor, when the General Manager advised he'd take it on notice and the Director did likewise regarding the costings, what does that specifically mean? I don't think Council has ever been provided with a detailed advice regarding the upgrade costs for the Galong Road, simply that we've been successful with a grant and we're making a co-contribution. What does taking it on notice mean? Are we sure about?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, taking a notice means we will provide a fulsome response. If our response doesn't satisfy you, we'll provide more information that does. Thank you for that. Okay. I'm going to put that recommendation that report is received and noted. All those in favour? I think we've got everyone, haven't we? So, yep, thank you, councillors. It's unanimous. And the appropriate staff will get back in relation to the questions that were asked. 2166, Regional Road Transfer and New South Wales Road Classification Review. There's a little report there and a big recommendation, councillors. I have a mover and a seconder, firstly, for the matter. Councillor Stadmiller has moved it. The seconder, Councillor Manchester, seconded it. Do we have any questions in regard to that, or anyone want to speak to Councillor Stadmiller?
Question for the General Manager. What financial impact will this have on Hilltops' bottom line if we've been contracting a lot of these works to our own workforce, if these are taken out of our hands?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, I cannot answer that question, given we have been provided with no information about the what roads, other than what is mooted. We are unaware of what contracts may be available, may not be available. The transfer of the roads does not mean we may not be availed of the opportunity to tender for the work, or otherwise. This is raising the concerns is that once they go out of our hands, we are then in that process. So if should we be a successful tenderer for work to maintain these roads, the impact would be less. However, if we were unsuccessful, should we choose to go for the work, it would be a larger impact. So the magnitude would be is what with the parameters of the agreement to maintain these roads, which we are not aware of at this point.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, question to the General Manager.
Councillor Armstrong.
Would there be an opportunity for perhaps you to provide council with, at a later date, with the details of revenue earned through council's execution of works for the RMS, and also the quantum associated with the repair program? Because it would appear as though both those aspects of council's revenue would be impacted if, or potentially, by these changes.
That is correct. Yes, we can provide that. We should be able to provide that information.
Thank you.
Councillor Manchester.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. Look, my concern with this one is is not so much of losing the funds, but if we do end up with them reclassifying some roads as regional roads, which I probably doubt that may happen, but that we do actually do it with the same amount of funding. That's one of my main concerns. The other one that does is that, and I can't see that happening either, is in our particular instance, is losing some of the regional roads, and then as regional roads, and then it comes as they then treated as local roads. I can't imagine the state government taking on a responsibility of the road. So I said, one, I think that there's more likely that the regional roads, if they do alter them, the chances are they might change them to local roads, which then become a responsibility of us without any funding. Or there is a chance that we get added some extra roads that without any extra funding. Those are my main concerns with this.
Thank you, Councillor Manchester, for that. I've had a mover and a second in regard to that. I just on my comment on that item was that speaking to various other councils, it is a matter that a lot of councils have got a lot of questions in regard to it, and all due respect to our state member that sits on our council, that what sounded like a really good idea at the time, but there's a lot of work to be done just with local government just to sort out, to make sure the benefits are gained for both parties. So I think there's a bit of work to be done there. We've got a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that's there. If everyone's happy, I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour? That's unanimous, and Councillor Tuckman had include an interest. Thank you, councillors. 2167 Hilltops Works Report. Councillors, the report's there in front of you and the recommendation. Moved Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor Manchester. Thank you. Put question, Councillor Stednall, is it, Councillor?
Yes. Question for the General Manager. It does list in the Works report the number of mains breakages or what have you on a monthly basis, but could we have that amended so that we understand what type of breaks they are, and also the address or location of those so they can be monitored so we can keep a closer look on our infrastructure in regards to water mains? I've had a number of phone calls this week and social media contacts in regards to what's going on with a main break. No one really seems to know where it is, and it ends up on the Facebook page for Hilltops Council and just says main break. It just creates confusion in the community. If they knew where it was, they might be able to understand a little bit better as to how close it is to them and how it might affect them.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly we can provide more information, identify the breaks as they've occurred. Thank you. Councillor O'Connor's got a question, I think. Councillor O'Connor?
Yes, just a question to the General Manager. Most of those water breaks that have happened, recently, they're just due to weather, or are they breaks that are due to just poor infrastructure?
Through Mr. Mayor, most likely is a combination of both. Some of the pipes there are aged. As I understand it from the manager, water and sewer, who is not here tonight, however, I do ask him for an explanation, just as you have. The composition of the soil is such that when it dries out, it expands and it contracts, which puts relieves pressure on the pipes. When the water comes through and it's resaturated, it expands and it cracks the pipe. So, and then there's the heat. So all of these factors based upon the soil that is the difficulty across the board with what pipes lie underneath the ground. That is the main cause, is the expansion and contraction of the soil based upon the seasons and the prevailing weather conditions. So absolutely right. But it's not necessarily just that. It is also the age and the types of materials that have been used at the time. So it's not just one thing. Thank you for that. Okay, councillors, maybe to put Councillor Flannery.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Question: as you'd be aware, we all received correspondence from a ratepayer at BOOROWA during the week regarding some of the road, a road in particular in the BOOROWA, former BOOROWA Shire, there's been money allocated in this year's budget for gravel resheeting, which I expressed at the Asset Management Committee my concern over the allocation. Some of that gravel resheeting has commenced. Could the General Manager, by way of circular, provide us with details of proposed gravel resheeting work that will occur prior to the next council meeting? And I believe that we need to review the allocation of some of those monies, and it needs to be, as per my discussions at the Asset Management Committee, there needs to be a bit more scrutiny or integrity around the allocation of money for the gravel resheeting program. I think there's a huge differential on where the money's going, and we certainly weren't given any metrics at that meeting for the basis of the expenditure.
Councillor Flannery, I'll probably be able to help you there with some metrics around the allocation of gravel resheeting, given the length and the number of gravel roads in the former Young Shire as opposed to the former Harden and BOOROWA Shire, and also the fact of about the 62% of the population that are around that former area. When you allude to what was said in the workshop about the allocation, I would welcome to sit down with you and go through the numbers and the gravel road with council and work out if those allocations are appropriate at any time. So back to our works report, council. We've had
no, that wasn't the question, Mr. Mayor. I said, could the General Manager please provide us with the proposed gravel resheeting program between now and the next council meeting? And if you'll remember, some of the gravel resheeting that's occurring this round was money that was moved from the asset, the plant replacement. So it is a one-off. And I simply asked at that asset management, I was told that it was based on traffic counts. Yet I haven't seen any of those.
Councillor, I'm well aware that we voted last year to boost our gravel resheeting with some funding out of the plant, and we all agreed that was a great idea. I also note in the budget reports about the allocations that have been expended, and I've asked questions of staff to give me a more recent number on the amount that was spent on the former Young area of the gravel resheeting, because it's a long way off what was allocated, but I'm just a bit concerned where the carryover went. It was in the draft budget, but it wasn't in the budget that we accepted. So there's some questions being asked from everyone in regard to the gravel resheeting, and in regard to, and I'll let the General Manager speak, but I've got my doubts if staff could give you the 12 months program in front of them for gravel resheeting, but I'll hand to the General Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Am I to understand your question, Councillor Flannery, is you want an operational schedule or going forward for the next month on where the crews are to do the gravel resheeting? It sounds very operational to me, but I am in your hands.
Yes, I'd just like to know what is the proposed work schedule for the next month, if we could, please.
I'll pass to the Manager of Civil Operations. Is that's something that we can provide to the councillor as that work schedule?
Through the Mayor, certainly we can.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Flannery. We will have that report provided to councillors.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions in regard to that? If not,
Mr. Mayor, could through you to the General Manager, Mr. General Manager, could you please convey to the staff at the Young Lawn Cemetery my thanks and the community's thanks for maintaining the facility in such a pristine state, given the inclement weather and difficulties of COVID-19.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. We'll pass that on through you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, I'll put the report and the recommendation. All those in favour?
Yeah.
That's unanimous. Against? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. 2168 is the action summary report. The reports there, councillors, and recommendation. Moved, Councillor Horton, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Wallace, thank you.
With a question, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Question, Councillor Wallace first.
Thank you. It relates to a fond subject of mine. It's 19/391 on page 325. It's the Lambing Flat Chinese Tribute Garden. At last month's meeting, we were told we had workshopped this as part of the budget process, then it was realised that we hadn't. Now it says that we are just to be workshopped later in the year. I suppose I have two questions in relation to this. My first is, when is that going to happen? And secondly, this was in part funded through the Strong Community Fund, the amalgamation monies. Are we still within that time frame, or have we sought an extension?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is we are still within the time frame. One of the things that, with the departure of our senior projects manager, I have a 60-page document updating me on the multitude of some 28 discrete programs that this council is undertaking, worth some $40-odd million. The Lambings Flats Chinese Gardens is certainly one of those. I'm working closely with the project managers directly, with some input from the appropriate, usually the engineer, as well as the finance department, to get a better understanding on when we will be able to workshop these issues. I do flag that not much work has been done on the Lambings Flat one, as I understand it, after talking to the project manager, but it is on the list. I'm sorry that that's not a direct answer on when. If we prioritise it up, I can do that, but it will be the cost of something else. But I'm in your hands. If we want to escalate that, I will, and I'll take that back to the team.
Thank you for that, Councillor Flannery. Was that, sorry? Yeah,
yes, Mr. Mayor, look, I was advised by the General Manager that there would be information regarding the Murrumburrah Creek upgrade in the coming to August council meeting, which clearly it hasn't. Could we be advised of why it hasn't come to the August council meeting? And unfortunately, I missed the Blackett Avenue, a very poor report about Iandra Street and Blackett Avenue. Anyway, I'll just make that comment. That
the general manager will answer your question in regard to Murrumburrah Creek now, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, through that. So as I said, with the departure of the senior manager, I'm behind in getting on top of the projects. However, having said that, by the end of this week, we will deliver to you the detailed project implementation plan, as well as the appendices, which will include the plans, the Gantt charts, and full costings for your deliberation. In the subsequent week to 2 weeks, we're just not quite sure when, we will call upon the consultative group to look at those, and then we will bring that back to council for the September meeting to receive and note to meet the Building Better Regions conditional date of the 8th of October to have a funding agreement. So I need to get that information to you. We have discussed that today on how we do that. And so you will have that information for your consideration by the close of this week. I do apologise, it's behind. However, that is the way forward.
There's not much more I can say, Mr. Mayor. It's probably similar to the Blackett Avenue report. It's disappointing.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, the Creek project's been talked about, and the funding, and a lot of work's gone into it, and there's still a bit to go. But as was General Manager alluded to, there was discussions had today in regard to the funding and how them timelines are to be met. So there will be considerable effort put into that particular project, given the enormous size of it and scope of it, and the technicality around it. So I'm hopeful that that report will come to us all, so we've all said to the community it's coming, and we just haven't got there yet. So I agree with you, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's worth noting that the HRDC, or Chris at the HRDC, has put an offer to council for what I think is a very small fee to help, I wouldn't say manage the project, but given our asset manager, or whatever his title was, is departed, perhaps the general manager might like to reconsider that offer before we get even further behind.
That's something that I'll leave completely in the hands of staff and stay away from it myself. Okay, 2168, that's the action summary report, councillors. All those in favour of the recommendation? Against, thank you, councillors. Councillor Flannery noted as against receiving status of that action plan. Thank you. 2169 is about media releases and Office of Government circulars. Do I have a move and a seconder to accept that? Councillor Horton, thank you. Councillor Manchester, seconded. All those in favour? Again, thank you, councillors. 170, councillors, is the committee reports requiring action. And the first one is from the BOOROWA Community Garden Committee with a recommendation there. So that's on your hands, councillors. Moved, Councillor Manchester. Seconded, Councillor Tuckerman. Thank you. All those in favour of the recommendation? Against? Thank you, councillors. That's
Mr. Mayor, I was actually, I think, appointed as the Borough as the representative council nominee. I wasn't advised of the meeting, so my apologies to them for not attending. Could the general manager or whoever is responsible please inform me of when the meetings are?
Certainly, Councillor Flannery will take that through the Mayor. We'll ensure that the nominated councillors are advised of those meetings, or we have the discussion with the presidents of those to ensure that that happens.
Thank you. 2171, Moringo, Community Association and Moringo 355 Committee. Report their councillors and the recommendation. Moved, Councillor Wallace.
No, I'd like to move a different recommendation, thanks, Mr. Mayor, or at least seek clarification on what this one means. I understand Part A is published, but B, it says confirm the recommendations contained in the minutes. Does that mean, what does that mean? Does that mean everything that was recommended in the minutes will be done? Or what does confirming the recommendation, or is it confirming that council knows about them? Or is it confirming that they'll be done? Or is it, what is it confirming? I suppose I need some clarification on that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. I'll ask the appropriate Director of Corporate to respond to that question from Councillor Wallace before I go anywhere with the recommendation or motion. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is, I imagine you're referring to one item in the minutes where there's a recommendation that council considers, I believe, a repair rather than request that it be carried out. For clarification, councillor, the status of the council's in the position where it's in the hands of the committee when the minutes come forward to not second guess the intent of the minutes coming forward. So for clarification, it's council is currently aware of the intent there, and it would be for council to determine whether or not to go ahead with the building modifications or building repairs as recommended in those minutes. So there's no obligation in adopting these minutes for council to proceed or not proceed with the repairs. It would be incumbent on officers to inspect and provide a response.
Yeah, okay. Wallace, yep. I'll leave it with Mr. Wallace for the moment. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I understand that. I'll move it, but I would like to speak to it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have something about so it's moved, Councillor Wallace. Seconded. You seconding that, Councillor O'Connor?
Yes, but with a question.
Yep, we'll get to that. Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. So we've got to move in a seconder. Okay, so Councillor Wallace first would like to speak to the recommendation in the report, I imagine.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is one I take particular interest in, obviously, and I attended the AGM at which I was advised that despite sending their minutes in every 2 months, that there's been no correspondence from council since February. So we're talking a period of over 6 months there. So when in minutes things are recommended to be done, the office bearers at the Community Association have absolutely no knowledge as to whether anything's going to be done or not, and so there's no communication there. And then I see that the recommendations that are in the minutes here, it talks about monitoring things by council staff. Now, I don't know how they're going to monitor the pump out of the septic system. That poses some interesting ideas. The monitoring of whether three-phase power is needed. I'm told that the new air conditioners and heaters that were placed in the hall, if you put them all on, the whole thing blows and three-phase power is needed. I don't know what monitoring is required there. And it also says toilets are being monitored for running water. Well, I don't know how you monitor running water in toilets, but if you go and have a look, they might be running or they might not be. And also, further to that, it doesn't actually address the one recommendation that is obvious in the minutes in there about installing an awning over the entrance. So I think that needs to be added. I suppose the bottom line is that there's a complete lack of communication with these sorts of organisations. I don't know if it applies to all the others, but definitely with this one. And I'd have to say, without fear of bias, that this is probably one of the better run ones of these that we have in our council area. So I think council needs to get on and communicate with these organisations because they're doing a lot for nothing and they need to be respected. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace, and very pertinent points. Councillor O'Connor.
Actually, very similar to what Councillor Wallace was saying. I couldn't understand how three-phase power was being monitored and, toilets. So I think we did have an original format for these minutes to be presented, and that recommendations came back as a table with things that they wanted council to do. This is not in that format, I guess, and I don't actually know whether we can do any of those or some of those.
Thank you, Councillor. My little comment on this, just before Councillor Manchester, is that, as Councillor Wallace alluded to, there's a number of other organisations who do send their minutes. Some don't, but there's some do. And one I would mention is the Rye Park people who do send their minutes to council. But this month, for example, that they were in early, but they're not in our council business paper. So somewhere in our organisation, when these people are good enough to send them their minutes of their meetings into us, we need to have a central point where that can be gathered and put into our business paper. So I agree with the councillors on both those points. Councillor Manchester.
Yeah, just a point there, Mr. Mayor. A few years ago, we had some issues like this that's come up, in the old Harden Shire days, that when they send these minutes in and there is some recommendations like what Councillor Wallace pointed out in these lots, that it's hard for the staff to actually pick up on them unless they read the whole lot of the minutes. And I have suggested to other progress associations that if there is something that needs to be done, it is done by a formal letter to the Shire or to the General Manager, putting a request rather than just hoping that these minutes get read and a request get picked up by a staff member. I think it needs to be highlighted to them that just sending the minutes in doesn't actually, put the item that they are requesting be done on the books. I think we need to make it clear to these organisations.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, certainly as I identified in my 100 days, this is an area that we're not doing as well as we could. We do need to, there is a process of education for the Section 355 committees about what the standard is, what format it should be, how we can streamline this, how we can assist them, understanding the good volunteer work that they do. Specifically to some of those questions, I pass to the Director of Corporate to elucidate on some of those issues succinctly. Thank you.
As I take all those points on board, Councillors, through you, Mr. Mayor, there have been some very recent changes going through the organisation structure. As councillors are aware, there's a new member of staff that's taken over this function who will be able to make some significant changes to this area going forward. This is all wrapped up in part of the ongoing organisational change process, but that will allow us to deliver a much higher standard of service.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckerman.
I just would like to ask who is responsible for liaising with these community groups. Clearly the restructure made the position that was responsible redundant. So who, in fact, is responsible?
And to the General Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Manager of Governance is responsible through to the Director of Corporate. So it is within the Corporate Directorate, and we will be streamlining the processes as I've outlined.
Councillor Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, I know I have certainly suggested this before, that we should get a very simple spreadsheet template that can be sent to all the village committees. And if there are action items for council, they list them on that and that come back with the minutes of the meeting, so that a similar spreadsheet that we have, which seems to just grow the longer, it has the yellow highlights where items be removed, but they can then come back and it be a spreadsheet for Wollongong, Wombat, Hart, that all gets amalgamated, and action items, and whether it has or hasn't been completed could simply be in the business paper at the back. So that surely wouldn't be that hard to do in this day and age of computers. In relation to Moringo, I know one of the action items is for council to spray for weeds. So given we do have a weeds function, are we actually spraying for catheads? And if so, that should happen now with a pre-emergent herbicide, not in January when everyone's got their feet full of catheads. If I could make that recommendation and be passed on, depending on what they're trying to, what other items are growing, but something like aloe or some other pre-emergence, right now is the time for that to happen.
Thank you for that, Councillor Flannery, and that goes on from what Councillor Manchester suggested early on about having a simple format that those committees can get to council and it can be understood. So thank you for that. And the conversation around those committees, they are important, and as Councillor Wallace said, they're all volunteers and they do a great job, so we need to make sure we hold our end up. So I agree with all those comments. On that note, I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Unanimous. 2172 is committee reports requiring no action, so similar type things there. Have a mover and a second move. Councillor Manchester, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Stadmiller. All those in favour? Is it unanimous? Thank you, councillors. That takes me over to question with notice. BOOROWA Dam report, and the responsible officer is the Manager of Civil Operations. There's a report there and a receive and note recommendation. We're going to move in a second to first. We'll do that. Someone like to move that item? Councillor Horton, thank you. The seconder, Councillor Rolls, thank you. I gather there are questions in regard. Yep, Councillor Flannery, I think it is. Yep.
Given I call for this report, I'd like to thank the staff member responsible. However, I do note that the timeline has long elapsed for this process to actually be in place. We had a statutory deadline of November 2019. So noting that we are running a long way behind, I think there was a change to the dam safety structure, legislative change by New South Wales government. The onus is now on the owners or managers of dams to have their own dam safety emergency plans in place, and that needs to be disseminated to those who are responsible for its implementation, and the SES is normally the authority that's responsible for the implementation of it, and then all those who are impacted need to be given copies of the plans and be made aware of the requirements. And I think we are a long way behind in meeting our legislative requirements. So I'm not too sure if the General Manager is aware of that, but he needs to be aware.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you like to want that? Okay. And that, again, is something that will need to be looked at and action completed with it. Any other commentary around that matter? If not, I'll move in. I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Councillor Tuckman, sorry, you were for the the recommendation? Thank you. Sorry, picked it up late. So that's unanimous. Thank you very much, councillors. And that brings me to the end of the meeting. Last item. So thank you very much, councillors. At 6:51, I'll call the meeting closed, and thank you all for your attendance, and stay safe. And there's updates every day with COVID, and I think we're going to have that poking about for a little while longer, but hopefully not as severe as it was in Victoria. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone.